Come on, come on. All right. And we're up. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you as many of you tune in. Hey, Bernadette, you're the first today as you tune in from Minneapolis. That is my home station, but you're tuning in from all over the country, and I thank you for that. Um, please continue to like and share the show. Like and share the show. It turns out, Greg Palast, we're getting views north of a million, a couple of million, but it takes us like a week or so to get there. So that's a great thing because, progressives get their algorithms messed over, but that's all right. That's not going to stop us at all. We're going to keep it going. And you can meet me on Blue Sky, the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. You can meet me everywhere, including Upscrolled now. Many of us are moving over to Upscrolled. Please check them out. Get on over there. You have more space over there than you have on other platforms. So let's get to it. What about voter ID? Voter ID, it sounds simple enough, right? People say, of course you should have voter ID. They don't have a problem with that. Some people do. But voter ID, obtaining identification, is not as easy as it looks. And now the House of Representatives, all Republicans, including Representative Cuellar, who wasn't he just pardoned by President Trump? Well, he did join in, and the House passed a new voter ID law that is an updated SAVE Act, which if you got married and you assumed your spouse's name, well, guess what? You could get knocked off the voter rolls and not be allowed to vote. What about these requirements? Proof of U.S. citizenship when you register to vote. What about a photo ID when you vote? Um, what about them sending all of your voter ID, all of your voter information to the Department of Homeland Security? That's in that too. There is so much in this bill. And some people are saying that a lot of people in this space, Greg Palast, you've been warning that something like this would come.
Oh, yeah.
You said they will not stop. What did my father say? He always says that, slave masters don't retire. They just don't. They keep on going. And we've been told that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So, voter ID, this, they say, might have a tougher time passing in the U.S. Senate, but we'll see. So let me know, what is the SAVE Act and what is the big deal? Why do Republicans want it or people on the right want it? Why are progressives saying, no, this will disenfranchise perhaps millions of Americans? Greg Palast, Vigilantes Inc. Everybody go to gregpalast.com. I've reached out to, or should I say, people have reached out to me about seeing Vigilantes Inc., America's new voter suppression hitmen. This documentary came out in 2024, but it is one thing I will say about you, Greg, you're always updating because unfortunately, the right to vote is always under attack. And thank you, Jamie Foxx. Thank you, Leonardo DiCaprio. They've been partners with you. They will let you see this. They're paying for you to see it. If you go to gregpalast.com, have a viewing party. Watch it yourself. It is funny. It is sad. You're going to see Greg almost get shot in a lovely lady's home. I mean, all jokes aside, you see people pushing. You see the face of voter suppression. People who will challenge your vote, challenge your registration, and you don't even know it. You'll go to the polls and you find out you've been struck from the rolls because someone decided to challenge your right to be on the voter roll. So, you know what? Let's get to it, everybody. I want you to go to vote.org, vote411.org, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Find out if you are registered to vote, if you're still registered today. And everybody like and share, like and share, like and share. Hey, Andre, Bernadette, sending you all so much love. So, okay, what happened today? And why should we be concerned? As we are watching ICE, got a victory in Minneapolis, but not so fast, everybody, because while they're removing the ICE agents from Minneapolis, guess what? They're being deployed in more than 150 spaces all over the country. They're deploying agents and they are deploying their lawyers to 150 sites all across the country. That's happening right now. So, and Steve Bannon did say that, well, we should have ICE at the polls. What happened today in the U.S. House of Representatives? What did they vote on, Greg?
So today, the U.S. Congress voted that is the House side, voted for the SAVE Act, the Save America Voting something Act. I don't remember. They come up with these acronyms, but it's not saving anything. It is, as Gerald Griggs, president of the NAACP of Georgia, says, this is Jim Crow 2.0 roaring out of Georgia, where some of these tactics were first tried out. Now, why do we care? We're all for saving American elections, but this is doing the opposite. So here's some of the provisions, and they sound on the first reasonable. For example, they're saying you have to prove you're a citizen to vote. Well, hey, Santita, if you're not an American, you don't vote in our elections. Here's the problem. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And I'm not kidding about that, when Florida used, and these are, by the way, they use something called the SAVE or SAFE files out of the Department of Homeland Security, the list of people who've been deported. And they use that to make sure that none of these illegal aliens, people who've been deported, are on the voter rolls. And believe it or not, some people who've been deported are named Jose Garcia and Linda Rodriguez. And so here's one question for you. How many Linda Rodriguezes and Jose Garcias are there in Florida and Georgia and all the other swing states? They want to wipe out. So what they've been doing is they want to wipe out everyone named Jose Garcia. And I'm not guessing, because they tried it once before in, it was about the 2010, 2012 election coming up. They got the list of deportees from Department of Homeland Security, the state of Florida. They insisted on getting this. They then wiped out nearly 180,000 registered voters, almost all of them common Hispanic names. 180,000 voters in one state using the system. They say, well, if they're not Americans, wow, how do we get hundreds of, tens of thousands of people voting illegal? The answer is they weren't illegal. They lost their vote. But when the state actually went through, because after all, it is a state and federal felony crime to vote illegally. You go to prison, then you get automatically deported. So how many people did they arrest? And how many people did they find actually committed this crime? They arrested and convicted one single person. By the way, happens to be an Austrian Republican, but out of 180,000 people, one was an alien voter. And by the way, he went to prison for 10 years and then has been automatically deported. That's a pretty heavy price to pay just to vote for your school board or even president. So, but what happened to those other 180,000? Well, when people said, oh my God, these are Americans who are not allowed to vote just because they have a name similar to someone deported. And the answer is, well, they could get their vote back. All they had to do was take a day off work, go to federal court, prove that they are Americans, prove that they're citizens. And so now here's the problem. Not a lot of white people were nailed on that list. People named Koch and Trump, etc. Those are not common names. See, they use this trick too. Obviously, deportees are going to have a lot of Hispanic names or Somali names or other names. 90 of the 100 top. For those who know me, I'm a statistician and economist by training, so I can tell you right now, 90 of the 100 most common last names in America are minority names, like Jesse Jackson, like Jose Garcia. and that's or they're going after the very common names of Asian Americans like Ho and Nguyen, etc. Now, why is that important too? So this whole idea that there are alien spaceships coming down and aliens are voting in our elections is madness, but it is aimed and targeted at voters of color. And of course, they know that statistically speaking, voters of color are the color blue in their votes. So that's just the citizenship provision. And again, look, if there are a whole bunch of illegal aliens, I'm not talking about one Austrian Republican in Florida. If there's a bunch of illegal aliens, then let's do something to stop them from voting. But here's the problem with citizenship. Here's the problem. If you go to gregpalast.com, and I have many writings on this for Raw Story and Rolling Stone and others. If you go to gregpalast.com, you'll see that, for example, how do you prove you're a citizen? There's only really two main ways of doing so. You have a passport, and 2 out of 3 black people do not have passports. Who has passports? People who go skiing in the Alps. Who are they? There's some very rich guys who have no problem because they have passports. The second way is your original birth certificate. And I mean original. And most states will not accept a copy. It has to be original. Do you know where your mom put yours? So there's about 21.
So wait. What do you mean your original, not a
Yeah,
copy?
you can't
But
because then it's easy to make a fake a copy. So they want some type of certification of either the original birth certificate or a certified copy, so that and there are 21 million Americans who don't have an opportunity who simply don't have their citizenship file, especially poor people who are born at home, et cetera. A lot of people are not even registered. Their births aren't even registered. We had a 101-year-old woman in Arizona that I met when I was filming for my film Best Democracy Money Could Buy. She's 101 years old. She was kicked off the voter rolls because she couldn't prove. Arizona for a short time also had a citizenship rule. She couldn't prove she was born at home 101 years earlier, and she didn't have a birth certificate. It's not rich people who lack those birth certificates. The other thing is, and guess who they tried it one other time in Kansas? Chris Kobach, Trump's vote fraud hunter in chief, who's now the Attorney General of Kansas. When he was Secretary of State, he imposed a law saying you had to prove your citizenship. And guess who got knocked out of the voter rolls? 36,000 registrations were rejected because they didn't have proof of citizenship. They were sued in federal court. The state was sued in federal court, and Kobach admitted that of the 36,000 people he removed, not one. The court asked him to name you stopped 36,000 people from voting. How many were actually alien, non-American voters? And he said under oath, zero, none, zero. 36,000 Americans lost their vote. But who were they? In the main, they were students at the University of Kansas. And the second group, young people who didn't have passports or their birth certificates were in another state or whatever. So it was mostly students. The second biggest group were American servicemen and women at the air bases in Lawrence, Kansas. So you're talking about American soldiers, and by the way, not incidentally, African American soldiers. I say, well, what? They're in the U.S. military. They have military ID. Guess what? Military ID is not accepted as a form of citizenship because we have people who are applying for citizenship, and they are subject to the military draft. They're also joined the military as a way to get their citizenship. We have people with green cards who were killed in I met one gentleman whose son was the first person killed in Iraq because he wanted to get his family citizenship. And that guy wouldn't, and those people wouldn't be able to vote. This is the real tragedy of this. So when they talk about, the Democrats just want people to, Mike Johnson said today, he's the Speaker of the House. Yeah. The Democrats just want to bring in all these illegal aliens. That's why they opened the borders so they could steal elections. Okay, your party and the Heritage Foundation, which did Project 2025, your party has said that there are 4 to 6 million aliens voting in U.S. elections, and all Democrats, of course. And I've called their offices. I've called I've called a dozen politicians who've made these claims, including the Heritage and also the Heritage Foundation. I said, okay, so if there are, I'm not asking you to give me 6 million names. And after all, if you know that there's 6 million aliens voting, number one, they're registered. You have their names, you have their addresses, you have their contact numbers. You're telling me the FBI can't find them in 4 seconds, or when they come to the polls, just arrest them? No, because they don't exist. I asked them, don't give me 4 million names, give me 4. You know that I've never gotten a single name from one of these guys. They can't find one. I said, I'll go arrest them. If there's an illegal alien voting in our elections, let's go arrest them. Just give me one single name. So this is about removing voters of color, especially Hispanic voters, and also scaring the hell, getting them away from the polls, because they're going to move. Those ICE agents may be moving out of Minneapolis, but I'm telling you where they're going. They're going to the polling stations.
They're going all over the country. Wired just reported that they are opening 150 offices across the country. So they were going to do the drawdown in Minneapolis, and the governor, the mayor, the citizens said that's not good enough. Everybody needs to get out of here. So okay, they're going, but guess what? At breakneck speed, they are deploying their lawyers, and they said they're street level agents, according to this Wired magazine report. So they're everywhere while they're talking about nationalizing elections. Now you've got yet another. Could this possibly, according to some reports, remove millions of people from the voter rolls?
Well, Brennan Center has said that you have 21 million people without photo ID that qualifies. That's like the absolute bottom lowest number. 21 million people, overwhelmingly, it's poor people, voters of color. Now, remember, America did pretty well for 200 years without having to show a photo ID.
When did this start happening?
It only started in 2010. This is a brand new thing. It was considered illegal to ask people to show all kinds of documentation because don't forget, we don't have a direct right for vote in the Constitution. It says you can't do anything that's discriminatory, and they know who doesn't have voter IDs. Guess who doesn't have a driver's license, Santita?
Me.
People who don't drive. And that means people without cars, people who don't drive. That's who doesn't have a driver's license. Now, those are not white suburbanites. You're talking about urban. And when they say the word urban, they mean black or they mean students. Students rarely have driver's license.
That's a New Yorker. I mean, someone who's in the city. I mean,
yeah,
really.
and they know the urban population, which does not like the Trumpites, are people, because if you're in cities, you don't need or want necessarily a driver's license, and it's very, very common, but not in the white suburbs, not in the white rural areas, which is the core of the Republican base. So they know who they're knocking out. At least 21 million voters will lose their right to vote because now.
Wait, no.
Mm-hmm.
What, 21 million?
Yeah. That's number used that almost all of us statisticians have been pretty much confirming, about 21 million. And now they can say, oh, well, you can just go get a voter ID. Well, remember, to get that ID, you have to have, once again, either a passport or my assistant, African-American from Dayton, Ohio, he tried to register in New York and get a driver's license. They told him he had to show up with a passport. By the way, I went with him. I'm an old white dude. They didn't ask me for photo ID. That's very interesting. This is California, so you can imagine the prejudice around the country. So, and getting these IDs. So what happens is, to get an ID, you need an ID. Plus, you have to spend money. A passport costs about $125 and takes weeks. This is a poll tax. We have a constitutional amendment against poll taxes. Well, if you're requiring people to spend money to vote, it sounds like a poll tax to me. So again, it's who doesn't have these IDs. And when you talk about women, if they have this proof of citizenship and you don't have a passport, you want to show your birth certificate. Well, 69 million American women do not have, did not keep their birth name. 69 million American women took on their husband's last name, so it's not on the birth certificate. No one has explained how you use your birth certificate with a different name to vote. I guess you're going to also have to bring your marriage certificates, and if you got divorced but kept the name, you're going to have to keep. I mean, it's a major paper hunt for people who don't have the birth certificate or don't have passports, and of course, voter ID. People who don't drive and people who do not and have other ID. So one thing that every state has is you can get a driverless driver's license. That is, you get a driver ID, but you can't drive with it, but you can just get the ID. They say, so there you go, no problem. You don't have to drive. Well, here is the problem. Getting that, spending the money, spending time. Now, in Indiana, this law, the first time photo ID was required was in Indiana in 2010 and went to the Supreme Court. And the ACLU and other groups that had gone to the court said, look, here's the studies. I've spoken to the expert Mark Barrero who testified in the case. And he said, the average person without a car, by definition, they're people without licenses. They can't drive or they don't have a car, even if they could, so they have to take on average 3 buses to get to a voting, a DMV or voting office. The average is 3 buses to get that ID and then spend that money, not only going there and coming from, but paying the fee. It's basically an all-day expensive affair. It costs you money and obviously you're going to miss work or have to have babysitters or whatever the heck, but it's 3 buses. And Scalia said, because they said it's an average of 20 miles for the typical voter to get to a voting office in Indiana. And a judge, so-called justice, or I like to call him Injustice Scalia, said, well, it's 20 miles whether you're white or black. It's 20 miles whether you're rich or poor. Well, I do know, I actually researched this. Justice Scalia had a BMW, and he could get there pretty darn fast. I know he gets there fast because he also got a speeding ticket in that BMW. So speeding in a BMW takes about 15 minutes to go 20 miles. If you don't have a Beamer and you have no car, you're going to be waiting all day for 3 buses. This is the reality, and yet the Supreme Court in 10 voted to allow states to have ID. And by the way, when they say ID, they mean current photo ID. Now, why is that important? The case that went before the Supreme Court were 10 voters who had ID. All 10 had driver's licenses with their photo on them. But those licenses had expired because all 10 were nuns who were in their 80s and 90s and were no longer driving, so they didn't renew their driver's licenses. So they show up, it's clearly them, their name's on it, their photo's on it, but the license had expired, but the voter hadn't expired. But still, Scalia and the right-wing court allowed that photo ID nonsense. And by the way, in that case, again, the state of Indiana agreed. The whole purpose of having voter ID, by the way, is so that someone doesn't vote twice or vote if they're not a proper voter. They said in the entire 100 history of record keeping in Indiana, they could not find a single case, not one case in 100 years of someone falsely voting with someone else's identity, where I say I'm Santita Jackson. They had not one case in 100 years. So to stop a crime that's never committed. I mean, never committed. I mean, well, like I say, 1 in 180,000. Okay, in Florida, I'll grant you one. Virtually non-existent crime. They are absolutely, totally, unquestionably knocking out millions of minority student, young people, urban, non-drivers, and women who don't have that citizenship proof. Just those two things, photo ID and citizenship proof. And that ain't the end of it, Santita. That's the beginning of this horror show, this Jim Crow 2.0, the SAVE Act. And by the way, this was blocked once. Now, one thing I would say is that they're going to need 60 votes in the U.S. Senate to pass this because they have to break a Democratic filibuster. They're going to have a tough time getting 60 votes because they're going to need Democrats to cross the line. And they're going to need Democrats to agree that their own voters should be shoved off the voter rolls. And that's going to be a tough haul. But they're trying to they're doing this on purpose to portray the Democrats as soft as wanting to have illegal voters. And unfortunately, their propaganda is winning. 76% of African Americans want photo voter ID. It's crazy because we have to begin educating people because it sounds so reasonable on its face. But you have to ask yourself, who does this affect? Who does this affect and how is it affected? Are we going to stop American citizens from voting? Look, Barbara, as Barbara Einwine has noted, Jim Crow, there was, since the 15th Amendment, since the end of the Civil War, and the acts protecting the right of African American and others to vote. Since then, no law says black people aren't allowed to vote. That's not how Jim Crow worked. You had to count the number of beans in jelly beans in a jar. You had to recite the entire Constitution without from memory. You had to, that type of business, and that was deliberately meant to knock out voters of color. They had poll taxes until the 60s. All these things, they never said black people can't vote, students can't vote, women can't vote. That's not how it worked. It works rather by restrictions that they know statistically will hit minority voters, and minority voters are Democratic voters. I'm not trying to protect the Democratic Party. I'm trying to protect democracy.
Well, help me to understand. Let's go back to 2010.
Yes.
Who made the decision and what was the justification for voter ID? I mean, we had been voting for, black people since 1965.
Yes.
And so that it hadn't been that long. That's my point. That's 45 years. Who made the decision? Upon what basis was the decision? Not even the who. It's the what. What was the basis upon the decision to institute voter ID?
Because the Republicans were losing Indiana. We think of Indiana as a red state. Well, let me tell you, Barack Obama won in 2008, and when they changed the law, he lost. He lost Indiana in 2012. Why did he lose Indiana? Because they changed the voting laws. It's just that simple.
And were voters who were inclined to vote for him purged?
They were purged. They were blocked. They had to, bring these IDs, et cetera. And a lot of people didn't even know it because it was somewhat new. It was a new demand. Again, this is not something we've had in America. We've somehow had a democracy rolling for many years without photo voter ID. And yet, so that's what happened in Indiana. So they went after nuns. They went after the nuns.
But why did voting work before 2010?
Because it's real simple. It's always been a felony crime in every state and the federal government too. You have federal and state felony crime laws, which says if you vote for someone using someone else's identity, if I go in and you sign, in the old days you signed your name, and they check your signature. If you try to vote for someone else, or you're not, they find out that you're not a citizen, or in some states they used to have, and very few states have these anymore, felony laws stopping felons, ex-cons from voting. If you vote illegally, you go to prison. And I have never yet once found a case in the very, very rare circumstances where an improper voter was let off the hook. In fact, one of the infamous cases is terrible. We have these very complex laws about when you can vote after you've served your sentence for a felony crime. And there was a woman in Texas. They said, well, she'd served her time for some, she had a joint when she was a kid or something, was caught with it. So she had a felony crime on her record, but she'd served her sentence. What she didn't know is that she was still under supervision. And she asked at the voting office, she says, look, I'm still under supervision, but I've served my time. Can I vote? And at the voting office, they told her, oh, yeah, you can vote. No problem.
Wait a minute. The judges. Wait. Because her mother told her, you served your time, go vote. Because she wasn't going to vote. And she said, and her mother said, no, you can vote. You've served your time. Now you are able to vote. She went into the polling place and she asked the judges, and maybe that's a misnomer. Maybe that they're not judges. I mean, and look, I am not trying to besmirch them, because people who give of their time to oversee the elections, we absolutely honor them. That having been said, most of them don't know the law. And she went to see a judge, and she explained her situation, and then what happened? She ended up.
They sentenced her to 5 years in prison. But again, this is not someone. It was overturned ultimately because the state officials had told her to vote. But that's how rare it is. How rare it is for someone who's not entitled to voting, because most people aren't going to risk jail time if they're not sure. And most people are not going to risk jail time to steal a single vote. I can't say it never, ever, ever happens. But I can tell you, for example, when Bush, I keep mixing Bush and Trump. It's weird. I never thought I would miss George Bush. Did you? Oh my God. When Trump ordered his DHS Gestapo and Tulsi Gabbard to kick in the doors at the Fulton County Elections Office and basically steal 70,000 ballots. What they were looking for is people illegally stuffing ballots in the ballot box. So they want to prove, based on this bogus theory, that black men are stuffing ballot boxes in Fulton County, which is the heart of Black Atlanta. And what they have to understand is not only did the local Fulton officials go through those votes, the Republican Party and Republican officials went through those ballots one by one by one. They couldn't find a single illegal ballot. Every ballot was accounted for by a registered voter. There was only one per voter. They were properly signed. There was no other vote anywhere else. It was a completely clean set of ballots. Not one wrongful ballot. Not one. And yet Trump has gone back in on this cockamamie theory that black men, and they emphasize black men are stuffing ballots. That comes from that film 2,000 Mules. If you watch my film, Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. I'm mispronouncing my own film. Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. You will see within our film a chunk of the film 2,000 Mules, launched at Mar-a-Lago by Donald Trump. This group would claim that literally 2,000 black men, who they call mules, that's why it's called 2,000 Mules. They call them mules, black men, were stuffing the ballots in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Detroit, and a couple of other cities in some swing states. And what happened was this film was based on videos of people stuffing ballots, black men stuffing ballots in the ballot box. Here we have the videos, because every ballot drop box has a video in front of it, a video camera, so you see who's voting. And all they did was show this one black guy putting his ballot in the ballot box. They showed the same film 3 times. Turns out his name is Mark Andrews, who's a Verizon executive in Atlanta, voting his ballot and his wife's ballot in the ballot box, which you're allowed to do and encouraged to do. Take your family ballots. So they went after this guy, Mark Andrews, and what they did was they smeared him as a felon, and they said he's one of 2,000 black men stuffing ballots. Supposedly paid, by the way, $10 a ballot to steal the elections by George Soros and Mark Zuckerberg. And so Mark Andrews, this one guy, has sued the group True the Vote, which is the group that came up with that film 2000 Mules. But it is based on 2000 Mules and this group True the Vote that Trump has used as the excuse to say people vote twice. Therefore, you have to eliminate drop boxes, which African Americans use quite a bit, so you don't have to wait in line.
No, wait, no.
Yeah,
Not only that,
yeah.
if you work, if you are not self-employed, you do not have flexible time, Greg. So you do not have time to wait hours in line. I mean, you don't have the time. So for Black people, this is
Patrice,
less a luxury, more of a necessity.
blinds.
It's a necessity. I mean, so it's like what? I mean, there are things. I mean, and it's not just Black people. It's like people who do not have that kind of flexibility. They need the space. That's why you need to have early voting, because it gives people more flexibility. It gives not flexibility, it gives them the opportunity.
Yes.
So it's not. So I'm just trying to find.
There's a million reasons why people want to avoid those lines. And let me tell you, not everyone has lines. When I was in Atlanta, last time I was in Atlanta, I was filming the last runoff election, the early voting. The line in the Black community for polling station was 3 hours long. 3 hours long. I mean, the line was like out to infinity. I go to the white suburbs. There's 3 people in line. They have so many polling stations. Drop boxes were cut by 75% in Atlanta and Savannah, and the number of drop boxes increased by the state in the white counties. But this is a national. So now they're taking as Gerald Griggs says, they're taking Jim Crow 2.0 and spreading it around the country. So you've got the citizenship requirement, you got the voter ID requirement, and here's the other problem. They want all the states in this bill, the states have to turn over their voter files to the federal government, to DOJ and the Department of Homeland Security. Now, there's many problems with that, beginning with the fact that when voter files were sent to DOJ, they were shared with that group, True the Vote. So the government is slipping your private information, including your social security number. And by the way, thousands of those names given to the Department of Homeland Security. You could find your social security number on the net, on the dark web. It's being sold. And this is from Department of Government Efficiency. Homeland Security. Do you feel safer when Homeland Security can't even keep track of your social security number?
Well, they were giving the information to right-wing
groups.
But hold on. I get this from the Arizona Monitor. Former Republican state legislator Austin Smith pleaded guilty. Now, this is dated November 17th, 2025. So this happened in November. He pleaded guilty to what he previously called, quote, ludicrous, close quote, charges that he personally forged more than 100 signatures on his petitions for re-election. You can't make this up. The Republican, he was a member of the Arizona Freedom Caucus. He has a history of spreading false claims of election fraud in the 2020 presidential election. He pushed for election law changes in the state legislature, and he was guilty. And then you remember the gentleman who was the Republican who was going door to door in North Carolina, and he was picking up your absentee ballots, and he was changing. Remember that?
Yeah, and throwing some of them away. Just throw them away.
What? No, I mean, wait. So I'm just trying, but none of this ever comes up. None of this ever comes up. And yet we've been smeared, Black people have been smeared with voter fraud. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what's happening here. First of all, you catch it's wrong, and you'll catch a case. Nobody wants that. So help me to understand. Do you think this will pass in the Senate? I mean, because this is really, really restrictive, Greg. I
I think it will not pass in the Senate because they need they need 60 votes to cut off the filibuster to get to a vote, and they're not going to get it.
But what could they do? Okay, if it doesn't pass in the
But
Senate,
here's
you
the
know
other.
they've got a plan B.
Oh, I've got to tell you, you think that they're going to stop there? No way. What they are, Trump has already issued an executive order which accomplishes the same thing as the SAVE Act. And even though Congress is only, not the president, is supposed to determine voting law, and then it's mainly in the states. The president is not supposed to be touching voting law, but he's issued executive orders to require citizenship, to have states turn over their voter files. And as you know, look, you can't separate the troops in the street, the ICE troops in the street and National Guard in the street from this attempt to bend the election. Not attempt, they can do it. Trump would not have won. I'm telling you right now. Go to GregPalast.com, read Trump lost, vote suppression won. If it weren't for vote suppression, Harris would have won. No question. No question. Because
why do you say that? You said, why do you say that with such certainty?
Well, by background, I'm a statistician. I used to was a professor of statistics, and I have my degree in economics, and this is my specialty.
From the University of
Chicago. Yeah, and so the believe it or not,
economic school in the Western world.
Yes.
Say that.
And so
they've got more Nobel laureates in economics and in physics than anybody.
Yes. And so I was trained in this, and believe it or not, the government actually issues these reports, an agency called the Elections Assistance Commission. And for those who know how to read statistics, it's hundreds of pages of numbers and tables, but it gives all the breakdown of race and who votes and who's been purged, et cetera. In the last election, before the 24 election, we had 24 million people removed from the voter rolls in the states. Now, most of those had died or actually moved, but we had a good 6 million of them, of people who were removed illegally, who were accused of moving, and once again, the urban population is more mobile. And if you move within your county, you're not supposed to lose your vote. So, for those who've seen Vigilantes Inc., you can see that the infamous case of Christine Jordan, because I was there. I'm at the polls. She's an elderly black woman in a walker, 50th year voting at the same place. They threw her out. They said, you're not on the rolls. You're not on the rolls because she was purged, meaning that she was struck off the rolls for supposedly not living in Atlanta.
And presumably the people at the polling station knew who she was.
Yeah, but they can't do anything because, they say, well, your name's not here. And then sometimes they tell you, for example, oh, don't worry, here's a provisional ballot. Well, 50%, 47% to be exact, just about half of the provisional ballots cast are never counted, because if your name's not on the voter roll, you can fill out 25 provisional ballots and they can't count it. They can't because you're not on the rolls. So, and again, overwhelmingly, it's voters of color who are shunted to provisional ballots, 50% that don't get counted. So this is one of the big problems we're running into. We've got Doge sticking their hands into the voter files. ICE was Trump said to Walz, the governor of Minnesota, that if you turn over your voter files, we'll remove ICE. Now, thank God there was enough public pressure to force them to leave anyway, a small victory for freedom. Whoever thought we'd have occupying troops in the middle of American cities? I mean, we could not have imagined this even in Trump 1.
Yeah, we could have, because
maybe imagine.
I only say that because that's where I think we have to really recognize these occupations when they come under another name, because Black people have lived under occupation. Yeah. I mean, I wish there were better relations with the police, but George Floyd can tell you, Michael Brown can tell you something different. Philando Castile. And I'm not saying that all police behave this way because heaven knows that is not the truth. You have a lot of great police officers, and then you have a lot of police officers who bring their biases to the job. And there is a cultural disconnect. They don't understand the people and they have contempt for them. And then there are tragic consequences. And so, I mean, remember the police force they were the slave catchers who evolved into the police. So, I mean, I'm just saying, I think we just have to really understand that what happened to that vulnerable population is now happening to everybody. And we have to acknowledge it. If we don't understand the historical moorings of all of this, we're going to miss the point. I mean, we're
Oh yeah.
missing the point. I mean, because you have been screaming not in the wilderness, but you continue to push, and people are like, yeah, 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 until very quietly, without fanfare, while so much other stuff is going on, the House of Representatives, plus one Democrat who got a presidential pardon, they pass this. Now, hopefully, it won't pass in the Senate, but your film, Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen, shows us that there is a plan B. There's a plan C. They are enacting all kinds of rules and laws to keep us from voting. So what do you recommend that we do? I mean, because your birth certificate has to have the raised seal, right?
Yeah, you need an original birth certificate or some type of certified copy of it. But here's what I recommend to people, and it's a tough one. And we're going to have to get ready for this. First of all, make sure that you have ID. And I'm sorry, you're just going to. This is in many states. You're required to have that ID now. They're just trying to make it national. So make sure that you do have updated proper ID, that if you have a driver's license, it has the right address on it. Now, 20 states, including Illinois and Wisconsin, allow same-day voter registration. That means if you show up and they say your name's no longer on the voter roll, what you can do is say, I want to register today, and that is permitted in 20 states. So, but you're going to have a photo ID again, like it or not, and you're going to also have to have proof of address. And while the driver's license might be good,
provisionally,
you would still have to vote provisionally, which is a 50% chance it won't be counted. But that's why you want to have them mark off that you brought all this proper ID, including I would also bring something like a utility bill, electric, gas, phone bill that's to your address. That's to your specific voting address. So do check, and then always go to vote.org and check if you are still registered, because again, the purges are in the millions. And when under the SAVE Act, they are taking the voter files of of states, and comparing it to voter files of other states and looking for common names where they say people are registered in 2 states, and then they wipe out your registration. I can tell you there's hundreds of Jesse Jacksons in this in America. And there's a Jesse Jackson in Illinois, and there's a Jesse Jackson in Atlanta, and they say, oh, that's got to be the same voter. No, it's just a common African American name. It's just not a common name for a Republican, but it's a common name. And same with, again, 832,000 Garcias in the United States. 832,000. There's a lot of common names. James Brown, 288 James Browns in Georgia, and they were knocking off all the James Browns because they say, oh, it's the same voter. Even though they have different middle names, it's junior and senior being matched. I mean, crazy stuff. And even where they have records with race, they're showing black people removed who are matched with white people. Come on. And again, it's the common name game. 80 of 100, 90 of 100 of the most common names in America are minority names. Koch, Trump, Pence, these are not common names. Jackson, Washington, Ho, Nguyen, these are very common names in America, and that's who they want to eliminate.
Well, I mean, just these last couple of minutes that we have here, how can we see your movie and connect this Vigilantes Inc. uh, America's new vote suppression hitmen, connected to what we've been talking about today. Because I think
Well,
people really need to see this. It's funny, it's a lot of fun, but it's very, very serious. And when you come away from this film, and I know I've talked about it a lot, everybody, but I think that we need to, Naima, sending you so much love, and Hannah, and all my people up there, and Robert. And hey, Robert, I have to say hello to folks. And Sean. Sean made the point. Let me just say this before I shift to your closing remarks.
mhm.
He's based on recent data. The claim that 2 out of 3 Black Americans have a passport is inaccurate. You're absolutely right, because I heard something else today. Um, you can flip that around. I think only a third of us actually.
Yes, yes. If I misspoke, I want to correct that.
No, no, no,
It,
no. That's not you. It's not you. But
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
No. Only. Yeah.
because you said
Only 1 out of 3 African Americans have passports. Only 1 out of 2 Americans
I was
in
about to say
general have passports. But
only half.
but who doesn't have a passport? People who don't fly around the world. And so, whose voters are those? That they understand the game of statistics. You know, that's why I've learned statistics so I can beat them at their own game. But I'm telling you right now, they're not going to cancel the midterms. They're just going to make it hard. They're going to make it impossible to vote for millions of people, and that's their game. That's their attempt, and they're going to move those ICE agents, as Steve Bannon said, to the polling stations to frighten people, especially Hispanics, because they know they're being picked up whether they're citizens or not. I mean, you have to run around and find your papers to vote, and frankly, white people don't have to go through that. And that's the problem. The suburban white voter and the rural white voter is not subject to these same restrictions and regulations. And they're never questioned. They're never questioned. I mean, and that's one of the problems. So what I want you to do is be prepared. And one way to be prepared, it's not too painful. I want you to watch a movie. Santita said, grab some popcorn. Chicago Tribune says it's entertaining investigative reporting at its best. So it's entertainment, but it's entertainment that will horrify you, make you laugh, but also my hope is that it will motivate you to protect your vote and protect others. I need you to let people know what the effects of the SAVE Act are and all the attempts that they're trying to do to get in the SAVE Act sideways. You're going to see a lot of states enact those laws that are in the SAVE Act, but the question is, in enough swing states where, especially where the GOP controls the voting, and that includes places like Wisconsin. They may have a Democratic governor, but the legislature sets the voting rules. Very concerned about Wisconsin. I'm very concerned about Pennsylvania, where these vigilantes are demanding the removal of tens of thousands of people in Philadelphia. Florida, which is a blue state if you let people vote. Again, changing the voting laws flipped Florida. You have to understand, Barack Obama won that state twice. What, the demographics became whiter? No, you got 250,000 people came in from Puerto Rico into the Orlando area alone. 250,000 people. These are American citizens. And believe it or not, they act and sound more like Bad Bunny than they do Mike Pence or J.D. Vance. But they're being scared out of voting, and so we have to take action. And as your dad says, arrive at 5. It's always better to go to polls with more than one person. Mm-hmm. Vote early if you can.
Oh, we just had a bit of a hold up, but Greg Palast is saying that you should vote early if you can. Go to the polls with several friends. Not only is it going to be a nice activity, but if you need support, you will have it. If you find that your name is not on the voter roll, you will have someone who can help you, who will support you as you fight to get your vote. So think about that, everybody. Think about that. Go to gregpalast.com and watch the movie. Thank you, Jamie Foxx. Thank you, Leonardo DiCaprio, because they are allowing you to see this film. They're paying for you to see it. So all you have to do is go to gregpalast.com. Best use of your time, these 90 minutes, I promise you, you need to see this movie. Coming up, we're going to talk about ICE. In Minneapolis, yay, AM 950 radio family. Yeah, they have withdrawn all of ICE from, uh, from Minneapolis, but not so fast. ICE are now being deployed in 150 areas all over the country. Street agents, as well um, as lawyers. So this is not over. It's only begun. Thank you, carpenters. We've only just begun. We've only just begun. And now, so please, everybody, go to vote.org, vote411.org. And if you have a problem at the polls, and if you want to find out if you're still on the voter rolls, call 1-866 our vote. 1-866 our vote. Just remember this, everybody. Remember that if you have a problem while you are at the polls, do not leave. Call 1-866 our vote. Do not leave don't leave the polls until you've resolved your issue. And push as hard as you can not to get a provisional ballot. You don't want a provisional ballot. You don't want that. You want to be able to go in the booth. And I've got Greg Palast who's going to say something to us just before he goes. You got 2 minutes, Greg? Boom.
Okay, sorry. The power went out in this section of Chicago for a moment. Anyway, I just want to say, go to gregpalast.com, GREGPALAST, watch a movie, grab a popcorn, and then take action. You're going to see some very courageous people in that film and some pretty goofy but very dangerous people as well. And so just watch the movie, sign up at gregpalast.com for my continuing reports, and I'll see you on the Santita Jackson Show.
Yes, and you know what? And he is going to be around Chicago. And you know what? If you get a big enough group, you can reach out to Greg, and you might be able to zoom him in for a few minutes.
Absolutely, I'd be, and we have if you have group showings, we have it in all forms: Blu-ray, DVD, download files, you name it. And because this is a fighting film, it's our film to tell our story. And that's the story of America and the fight for democracy, which never ends. Never ends. Okay, well,
your liberty, it means you got to be eternally vigilant, everybody. That's not a bad thing. You got to keep it going. Greg, traveling grace and mercies, AM 950 radio, the voice